Saturday, the 31st of March, we will see two unbeaten heavyweights put it all on the line at the O2 Arena when Fabio Wardley collides with Frazer Clarke for the British title. It is a fight that catches the boxing public's imagination, and for my money, it is the biggest heavyweight clash for a British title since we saw Anthony Joshua take on Dillian Whyte in an unforgettable clash at the O2 all those years ago. And when you look at the trajectory of both men's career since that fight, there is every indication that the winner of this fight goes on to huge things. But in a matchup between two men with contrasting styles, different amounts of experience, it's very hard to pick a winner. So in this video, let's break down both fighters and let's have a look at who could come out on top in this fight. Right, so I think the best thing that we can do here is watch him through some of the highlights from both men's pro careers so far, and let's start off with the title holder at the moment, Fabio Wardley. Yeah, so this fight was early on the way up for Wardley, and let's be honest, the guy he's in there with is a bit of a pudding. But, you know, you can only beat what's in front of you. Good little uppercut there from Wardley. The guy's firing back, but yeah, he's in awful shape, man. Shouldn't really be in a boxing ring in that sort of shape. Another great little uppercut. And do you know what? He is a journeyman, clearly, this guy, but Wardley's dealing with him well, and you can only really beat what's in front of you. This was Simon Vallily at Fight Camp. You know, Vallily had been in some big fights in the weight division below, albeit. And not knowing where Wardley was at the time was quite an impressive scalp to see him stop him. This is one of the fights that Wardley had more trouble in. Obviously, Eric Molina. He was sort of wobbled, stunned a little bit early on, but did end up getting the job done against the guy who, let's be honest, you know, past his best, well past his best, but at world level had some good fights. Wardley showing great reflexes there. You'd associate him normally coming back with the right hand there, but that was the jab. And this was the sort of coming-of-age fight, the coming-out fight, if you like to use that phrase, of Fabio Wardley when he fought David Adelaide out in Saudi. It was actually on the Fury and Ngannou undercard. We watched this on the live stream, myself, Brian, and the rest of the Pain Game guys. And this was a real pick'em. Like, I was maybe thinking that David Adelaide would get the better of this one. And it was close while it was going. It wasn't like Fabio Wardley went in there and put a beat down on him. Both men had moments, but yeah, Wardley's class, explosiveness sort of showed through. I was very impressed here because David Adelaide is sort of more the boxer out of the two of them, the one you would associate with having the better boxing fundamentals maybe. But Fabio Wardley's got a lot of power. He's got a good chin, and he showed that in this fight, sort of ending it with a real impressive stoppage. And David Adelaide is another one that I think we're seeing good dust-ups. Look at that right hand, left hook combination to put David Adelaide to the floor. Fabio Wardley really turning on the heat, on the pressure here. And it goes to show that, you know, he is still crude. He hasn't got that amateur experience. You see when he's letting his shots go, he is open to take them there. But it didn't matter because he stopped Adelaide in that fight. So on the eye, very impressive from Fabio Wardley so far in his career. 17-0. I think it's 16 KOs. I'm pretty sure that the only man he didn't get a stoppage over was his debut, was his first opponent. So, as I say, very good. He's come through a lot of tough tests so far, and he's shown us a lot as a pro, whereas Frazer Clarke has only more shown us what he can do as an amateur. Let's have a little look at some of his professional highlights. So pinning his opponent on the ropes here. Obviously a journeyman in there. Very top heavy, this guy. And he goes to show, you know, he's throwing shots back. It goes to show that Frazer Clarke can be hit, but I would always argue against these journeyman guys, you're maybe not as switched on. And again, you see it from this guy there. He's landing a couple of shots. The guy, do you know what? This guy's pretty durable, man. I mean, he hasn't moved off the ropes for the whole fight, but still coming back, throwing shots. And it is going to show that Frazer Clarke can be hit here. Again, another sort of plodder looking fella here. And that's nice from Frazer Clarke. Getting that right hand through, Tao comes in. Now, Marius Vac, this is probably the best win on Frazer Clarke's record, you know. And listen, let's be honest, Marius Vac is a glorified journeyman. He's got probably double-digit losses by now, but he has been in there with some of the best guys in the division, you know. He's a big, tough lump. And again, you're seeing the body shots utilised very well here. You'd have to argue that Frazer Clarke probably has the better body punching, I should say, than Fabio Wardley. And he does try and utilise it the best of his ability. Yeah. Some good work there, right hand over the top from Frazer Clarke. Good boxing fundamentals. Maybe not the same amount of hand speed as Fabio Wardley, but he puts his shots together well, and that obviously ended in a win to Frazer Clarke over Mariusz Whyte, as I say, is probably the best name on his record to this point. And that being said, in my opinion, would mean that Fabio Wardley has the more impressive resume as a pro. When you look at Fabio Wardley's resume so far, I think that there are guys on there that you could maybe argue that Frazer Clarke might struggle against. I'm not saying he wouldn't beat everyone on Fabio Wardley's resume, but I'm saying it's not a foregone conclusion. Whereas when you look at Frazer Clarke's resume, I don't think there's anyone on there that Fabio Wardley wouldn't get the job done against. And I've got to take my hat off to Fabio Wardley because what he has done since entering the pro ranks is pretty remarkable, to be honest. I am almost certain that Fabio Wardley only had 4 white collar fights. So he was fighting on the white collar unlicensed scene. Now listen, white collar boxing, I boxed unlicensed. I had quite a few unlicensed fights, and the standard's sometimes pretty good. I had fought guys that had come out the amateurs and whatnot. So it's not to say that it's what we'd normally associate with the white collar events. It's not 2 guys just rocking up out the pub and fighting. A lot of the time, some of these shows have good sort of formats, ranking systems and whatnot. So it's not to say that Fabio Wardley had never boxed at any sort of level, but let's be honest, he was no Olympian. And Frazer Clarke, some people would say, stayed in the amateur setup too long, but when you look at his record as a pro, although there aren't the standout names on that record, his amateur record speaks for itself, man. He boxed Joe Joyce about 4 times, I think. Otto Wallin, he boxed in the amateurs. Joseph Parker, Sergei Kuzman, Anthony Joshua. The list probably goes on without me pulling up the actual amateur record. So, although Fabio Wardley had no amateur pedigree and obviously went into the pro rankings and has blasted through these opponents, if you include amateur boxing in this, which I get that some people say pro boxing and amateur boxing are completely different, at the end of the day, you are still in a ring with those guys. And because of how long Frazer Clarke was in the amateurs for, you see, I don't know how many years ago it actually was, but not too long ago, they came away from using the head guards in the amateurs, which means that Frazer Clarke would have been in there over shorter rounds, I accept, against guys that have gone on to be world level, fringe world level. He was boxing them without head guards and he was getting wins over some of them. So I actually think that when you take all of that into account, the resumes sort of start to even themselves out. Not only that, but the sparring. Frazer Clarke would have been up at Sheffield, Team GB, and when you think that Anthony Joshua spent a lot of his pro career preparing for fights out of the GB setup, the sparring partners that Anthony Joshua would have been drafting in. We know that Frazer Clarke did a lot of rounds with Anthony Joshua in sparring. Frazer Clarke sparring would have been really, really good. But we can then look at Fabio Wardley and say, well, Fabio Wardley spent time with Dillian Whyte, camps out in Portugal and things like that. He would have been getting good sparring. You know how Dillian Whyte spars as well. Hell for leather in the gym. Nothing too technical. Real wars in the gym. You see the likes of Alan Babich in there, and they've spoke about the intensity of Dillian Whyte's training camp. So Fabio Wardley would have benefited and learned a lot from that. And when you look at the training setups now, Fabio Wardley is working out of Ben Davison's gym, which means that he is going to be prepped to perfection. Ben Davison, the results speak for themselves. We saw a career best performance from Fabio Wardley after he'd linked up with them. We saw a definitive performance from Anthony Joshua recently after linking up with Ben Davison. And I really do believe in his coaching ability and his ability to get the most out of his fighters. And one of the reasons this fight catches the imagination of the boxing public, and definitely my imagination, is usually you would definitely back a very well-schooled amateur who's been to the Olympics, been through the amateur cycle for years and years and fought some top guys. You would always normally back them against almost like a novice pro. I'm not saying Fabio Wardley is. He's had 17 fights, but without that amateur experience before, he's very much learning on the job. However, that prior experience can hold less value because the attributes are significantly heightened at heavyweight. The speed, the durability, the chins of both fighters, everything plays much more of a significant role in the heavyweight division. And when you look at the chins of the 2 fighters so far, Fabio Wardley, he's been sort of stunned in a couple of fights, but has always come through. Fabio Wardley has a very good trait of fighting fire with fire, and he's very good at doing so. Frazer Clarke, we haven't really seen his chin tested massively as a pro. We did see 1 stoppage on his amateur record in a bout against Joe Joyce. Frazer Clarke wasn't dropped in that fight. The towel did come in. He did look unsteady on his legs at times, without head guards on, obviously. So we have seen one of the men more hurt than the other. Now, if I'm Frazer Clarke, I really want to draw on those amateur fundamentals in this fight. I want to assert my jab, use my feet, stay sensible, and maybe go into the fight understanding that at times I'm very much going to have to ride the storm against Fabio Wardley, because there will be times when Fabio Wardley empties the tank on me, and you've just got to stay calm, stay composed, stay in there, and stay focused enough to see the openings when they come. And knowing at heavyweight, it really does only take one punch. If you can stay calm enough to see those openings when they come, you could close the show when your opponent is trying to attack you. So if Clarke can do all these things that I've just mentioned here, it's going to massively elevate his chances over Fabio Wardley. But the problem is this: I've got more uncertainty about Frazer Clarke being able to do the things that I've just listed as I have about Fabio Wardley being able to do the things that we have seen him do in previous fights. Because Fabio Wardley's punch power, speed, reflexes, and his chin are all huge factors in this fight for me. And in the pro ranks so far, we've obviously seen him tested a lot more. We've seen him come through tests, we've seen him win fights that at a glance, I didn't really think he was a favourite in, I remember, obviously, the fight against Nathan Gorman. I know that Daniel Dubois went through Nathan Gorman in good fashion, but Daniel Dubois had that amateur pedigree. And when Fabio Wardley was matched up against him, I thought it was a real hard fight, He came through that fight, and he came through that fight, having his chin checked in that bout. Obviously, he had his chin checked against Derek Molina, like we said. He came through that fight. David Adelaide, that wasn't a fight that I really made him a favourite in. And time in, time out, he's now proving me wrong. And the reflexes, the willingness to fight fire with fire at times is something that I think is going to hold him in really good stead here. And being that this fight is at heavyweight, the power element is so huge. Frazer Clarke could opt to box in that amateur style, try and box a little bit more long and at range and try and assert that jab. But when at some point Fabio Wardley leaps in with one of these wild hooks and catches him, the significant damage that shot is going to do is elevated massively beyond any other weight division. And I just really do see Fabio Wardley getting to Frazer Clarke in this fight. It could be one of those moments when the penny drops and we realise that Frazer Clarke really is the real deal, and he's going to go on and test himself at the top of the heavyweight division. But I look at Fabio Wardley and I do see a fighter there with that natural raw instinct, and maybe not having that sort of amateur pedigree and amateur schooling is serving him well as he goes through the pro ranks, because he's not having to adjust as much as a fighter coming out the amateurs maybe would have to. What we've seen from Frazer Clarke in the pro ranks so far, obviously, against Mariusz Whyte, he was impressive, but he hasn't really been able to show any more to his game than just sort of being the bully in there, being able to pin guys up against the ropes and work them. As I say, Mariusz Whyte gave him a bit more of a test, but so far, and we would have done, being that he's had double the amount of fights, so far, we have seen more from Fabio Wardley. If I had to put my neck on the line, and I don't even really think it's putting my neck on the line too much, I would go with Fabio Wardley in this fight. I think the last few performances where I've made him an underdog have showed me that actually Fabio Wardley is very capable. And I do think that Fabio Wardley could pull out a real good performance again, defend his British title and come through in flying colours, Let's see how this one unfolds. I'm really interested. I'm really eager to see how the build-up carries on going and who people are picking closer towards the fight. I think that Fabio Wardley will have a lot of people picking him because he has been in the spotlight a little bit more, definitely in the pro ranks, but I think a lot of, hardcore boxing fans and definitely boxers themselves within the boxing world, guys that have gone to the Olympics, will be picking Frazer Clarke. It really is a fascinating fight, Hopefully, as the fight draws closer, myself and Brian, the True Geordie, will do a bit where we break down this fight in a little bit more detail. But this is just my initial thoughts, having seen the fight made. But more importantly than what I think, I want to know what you guys think. Who do you think is a favourite going in to this fight? What do you think the keys to victory are? And let me have your winners in the comment section below. Pick a winner for me. I will be very interested to read all of your comments. I'll try and get back to as many of you as I possibly can. Thank you for making it to the end of another video. If you did make it to the end of another video, please smash the like button. And if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. I'm working really hard on banging this sort of content out for you guys. I will see you all in the next one.